Final Stop Brazil, Book 2, Life After Hell, Chapter 24, Samba as a Means of Survival, Cramming for Graduation. 8th of September 2007. A lot had happened in the past 3 months, but I was still alive, was still in the PFC and in the Pavilion 4, and I never lost sight of my goal, the Provadianum, the Brazilian high school degree. Since my professors were confident that I could make it, and my schoolmates encouraged me also to try it in this year, I signed up for the exams. From that point on, there was only one thing for me: cram, cram, and cram again. My daily routine was just dominated by this. Even during breaks, people found me with some kind of textbook in front of my face. After work and the school lessons, I studied the borrowed books from the school on the subjects Portuguese, grammar, mathematics, history, geography, physics, chemistry, and biology. Wrote off important points in order to study them later. There was still time, and I was full of ambition and energy. The problems I had in the pavilion left me completely cold. In the new, old cell, it was quite peaceful, as always in the beginning. With Regina, I got along well, and Rosalie was just stupid and not contentious. However, when Rosalie received her TV, it was the end of peace. From morning to night, MTV in full volume. Rosalie was a bit deaf. Fortunately, Regina liked the music on MTV no more than I did. My absolute music passion was only samba and pagode, and so it was switched off generally when she came back from work in the kitchen. Rarely was I able to follow news or reports, which annoyed me a little. But my TV stayed in the enclosure. Unfortunately, my little bit of peace would once again not last long. Although Lillian never returned from the hospital, but was transferred directly into the semi-open prison, the luck was with the bad and idiots. But we got a new roommate, allocated by the guard, allegedly very weak and sick. I lost the bed and slept back on the ground. From the first day on, me and Tachi didn't like each other. She didn't like me because she knew how quickly I had sussed her out with her alleged illness. She let Rosalie serve her from back to front. However, she was not sick at all when she listened to on her radio Baile Funky. Then she could dance merrily through the cell. But when it came to cleaning the cell, she was too weak and had to sleep. Whenever Regina brought food from the kitchen with the remains of the food that was prepared for the officials, Tachi was the first who went for it. The dirty dishes, though, she then left for me and Rosalie. Since I was certainly not here as a cleaner for the others, I only washed my dishes and the ones of Regina. The rest I left in the sink. Before I then brushed my teeth in the sink, I threw all remaining dirty dishes on the floor. This meant that Tachi complained about her dishes spread on the floor. My short and concise commentary on it: "Then wash it, you lazy pig." There were a few collisions of this kind until it was getting too stupid, and I made it clear that I didn't want any argument with her. This one was really too stupid and cocky for me. Bottom drawer. From then on, I ignored her, with the consequence that she was glued to Rosalie, who allowed her everything. Rosalie was just grateful to have a conversation partner whom she could get rid of all her stories about her men. Tachi was just right for this, because in me she found the wrong address for it. In order not to having to listen involuntarily or avoid Tachi's corrosive shrill voice, I used to practically fall asleep with my headphones plugged in, listening the radio station that mainly just played samba, transcontinental. English music I no longer liked. What for others here was the Bible or the nightly prayer was for me transcontinental and samba. It had become more than just music. It was my philosophy. During the day I listened to the station at work, and in the evening to study. It was sad that I still had to change every few months the cell to share it with loonies, but I tried to make the best of it. I was not allowed to move. My relocation request to another pavilion had been rejected once more. By listening constantly to the music on the radio, which was actually repeated all the time, I was soon able to sing all the lyrics, and this I did loudly by heart at work, which set not only my colleagues but also my two bosses in amazement. Apparently Donna Anna, one of our bosses, experienced never an extranjera knowing the text of the music better than the Brasileiras. One of my colleagues, Michelle, was well aware of me. We soon shared our common passion for this music, and were otherwise more often in conversation. I liked Michelle, this beautiful black Brazilian woman, very much, who not only herself was always cheerful, but infected all the others, including myself, permanently with her funny ways. I admired Michelle, how she responded to everyone with her pretty smile, and everyone got along well with her. I was completely the opposite. All the faces here at work and in the pavilion just pissed me off. Except of Helena, my Mozambican colleague, and Michelle, I spoke with virtually no one, only listened to my music. With Helena, I worked together. We ate lunch together, if I ate something, and sometimes I even let myself be carried away with her for a joke. From Michelle, I learned gradually that her happiness was only superficial, and she also met quite a difficult fate. Just as she had no family to support her. Like me, she never had visitors, and would not see her two small children again for a long time. She was a single parent, and certainly acted out of necessity when she went so far as to drug smuggling. Therefore, she had been sentenced for 15 years in prison. The breaks we spent together, just as we walked back together a short way to the pavilions. Since she stayed in Pavilion 2, and I was in Pavilion 4, we had little chance for conversation outside working hours. Our female colleagues were already eyeing suspiciously our close friendship, especially when we hugged each other to welcome us, as it is common in Brazil, gave us a kiss on the cheek, or when we walked back from work arm in arm up to the pavilion. No, I still had no intent in women. I just liked Michelle. She and Helena were the only ones allowed to approach me as close as this. In the pavilion there was also Flavia, who had learned so much from me, and was grateful for all times, who was allowed to welcome me in the same way as Michelle. Another radio station, Radio Bandi, organized a big party in respect of the Festas Juninho, which was happening during the entire weekends of June and until July, and included shows with all the possible stars of the Brazilian samba scene. And this happened just behind the detention center in the Favela Portuguesa, in one of the major football stadiums. I could experience to listen to all of my favorite groups for the first time live, because if the wind stood good, the acoustics of the show were just like as if it was in our place right outside the door. Fortunately, the shows began not before 11 at night, time when in our cell the TV volume was down, and the women had shut their gobs. Regina mostly slept already, because she had to get up every day at 5 in the morning. When Exalta Samba came on stage, my absolute favorite group, of whom I knew by heart all the lyrics of their hits, new and old, it touched my soul. Since a long time, I realized again that life was raging out there. I sat inside here, missing everything, and how much I missed it. A long time I had not been crying any more, yet this music made me cry. Of Michelle, I learned the next day that she was just like me, crying bitterly to the music of Exalta Samba. I promised her, when we get out of here, we go to a show of Exalta Samba. Are you serious? She asked me, scared. Of course. If I invite you then, I do it seriously, I answered her, whereupon she hugged me warmly. Basically, we knew that this would probably take a long time when it came to Michelle. With or without Michelle, I vowed that I would catch up fully on all I missed now. I would experience Exalta Samba live and all the other samba bands. That was my goal to fight for. But first, my exams were scheduled. I had to pass them. After that, I would concentrate on regaining my freedom. The fact that my son and the rest of my so-called family apparently forgot me. I got used to the idea by now. Finally, was I not always alone? So I would go on like this now, alone. But secretly, I still not lost hope to find someone out there who would end my loneliness, with whom I was allowed to start a new life. Whenever this deep sadness came over me, I fought it with studying like crazy. Of Julia, I received another FedEx with warm winter sweaters. Everybody envied me because they were not only cozy and very warm in these cold winter days, but also looked very beautiful and chic. Letters of her were less frequently, but like the FedEx came always signs that she hadn't forgotten about me. By a television commercial for the magazine Epoca, I learned that this magazine attached to every edition questions and answers of the provas from previous years. For me, this would be a great help to get set on how the questions would be. So I asked Julia to send me by mail the journal, or at least those questions. I promptly received from her every week the magazines, which ultimately saved me because many current issues were treated during the exams, which I would have otherwise not been able to answer because I was no longer up to date with news or important political issues. This magazine, however, changed it in terms of economic and political issues. Nevertheless, the questions made me virtually sick, and I began to wonder whether it made sense at all to cram all the subject material of the second degree. Most questions focused on the literary history of Brazil, next to economical, cultural, and political issues. For this I had, except the magazine, absolutely no new material. There was no opportunity to surf in the internet, and books were not available either. However, I was not giving up and continued to hold on to my subject matter, but now also extensively studied all the information of this intellectual journal. A small consolation was that Regina and some others had their difficulties to understand the questions, which were packaged in loads of text, and others also had to read the 5 alternative answers 3 times to even recognize a sense in it. It became obvious for me that the time of 5 hours would be very short to answer 63 of those questions, and then having to write an essay. To relax from studying in between, I answered the letters I received, from Brazil of course. Yasmin and Gilma wrote to me regularly as before. Andrea also wrote to me after a long time again. She now had been freed out of this hole of Arusha and was next door in the PE. Wesley brought on one of his visits actually a letter from Rosie. She had included photos of Michael, Max, and me in Spain she had made at that time on vacation with us. I had to swallow vigorously, because this photo of Max was the only memory photo of our dear little dog that I now possessed. Besides the photos, she put a copy of a dunning letter and another copy of a letter she had sent to a single one, book publisher. Her husband had given someone the task to rewrite the book on PC and run corrections. There was a price of €500 verbally agreed. The woman had managed just about 200 pages and left it at that, but she demanded the entire amount of €500. Rosie and her husband refused to pay the money since the contract was not executed, and so all ended up in court. The decision of the process is still unknown to me. She wrote how she was shocked by my accusation that she would probably even sell my book herself. Finally, she had not always time to write, came up with, I ought to think twice about who was to blame for my situation. That was exactly what I needed. She had given me a promise to help me with a book, and this was what she would do, of course, with one letter to one single publisher. In other words, the book would never be released if I didn't take it in my own hands. At the moment, it was simply not possible, so I didn't want to continue thinking about it. I would do that after my release and take the book back from Rosie. Michelle was the first to see my photos, but all the others were too curious to see photos of my son. Even one of my bosses asked incredulously whether that was really my son on the photo. Thus, without words, the rumor that I was a racist, which had been spread by Donna Mara, was killed once and for all. However, not least by Michelle, the Brazilian colleagues had started to look at me from a different angle. Some of them had become unsure whether they should view me as estrangeira or brasileira. However, I myself didn't feel at all like estrangeira, and could hardly find common ground with them. The whining that all wanted to go home to their families I could not understand any more. I replied to this quite indignant letter of Rosie, though friendly, but hinted between the lines that I really didn't care whether she wrote me or not. What worried me much more than Rosie was my money, because I was not yet informed by my bank how much was left of it, after having been debited car insurance and telephone basic charges for almost 2 years. Meanwhile, I did what everyone did. I used cell phones to call Wesley, and when I did this to request a SWIFT code for international bank transfers, I learned that payments from abroad would be taxed with 27%, and I better should find another solution to have the money transferred to Brazil. Perhaps, so he suggested, it would be better to do so by the consulate. Great idea, Wesley. I had no choice than send another letter to the bank to notify that the consulate would be the recipient of the money, and to the consulate to inform them about it also. Shortly thereafter, Mr. Waldman was sent by Mr. Sturm to align me that Mr. Sturm would not receive the funds, because then he would have to make a report to the German Youth Office that my money was available, which the Youth Office could withdraw for Michael's care costs. I was boiling with rage. Had I no longer have a right? This money was all that remained to me after my release to purchase clothing and basic necessities to live. This should be taken away from me by the Youth Office? Once again, I rushed another letter to the bank that everything would remain the same, so the money should be paid to my lawyer. I informed Wesley that it had to be this way. It was, and he was the recipient of the money. I preferred to pay 27% to the Brazilian government than to pay 1 single cent to the Germans. Finally, I didn't ask anyone to take Michael to Germany. On the contrary, they should now see where they were taking their care costs from. Certainly not from me. The whole story once again degenerated into a farce, thanks to the consulate. Just before the holidays, Professora Janet was probing us with grammar for the prova. We practiced essays in abundance, but I was very disappointed of her, because every time I showed her my exercises, she was looking for mistakes, criticizing something, and came up with slogans like, "All the estrangeiras have indeed the problems with the Portuguese verb conjugations." And every time I asked her to show me my errors, she said, "Not now, I have no time," or she simply could not find any to show me. What was this all about? Lena showed me one day a letter from the Defensoria Pública da União, with interesting contents. Foreigners had the same rights for benefícios, for example, semi-aberto, or livração condicional. I wrote this off and sent it to Julia and Wesley. At the same time, I asked Julia to provide me with her address, because I needed a local address, the basic condition to even get any civil benefits. This man Sturm came to this duty visit and brought me, even though I had told him to return letters coming from Germany, a letter from my mother. I had nothing to discuss with him, but he told me that my money was on its way. It is being transferred via the German consulate in Malaga to our account here, just as you wished. Pardon me, I couldn't believe how this man Sturm once again had twisted things. I haven't at all. Further I came not, because he immediately interrupted me. Yes, you have. Funny was that the bank clerks had asked for the account of my lawyer in their first response letter. When I wanted to know how much it was, I got the short answer, a little more than 2,000 euro. But my secretary will work out yet how much have to be deducted for social assistance. My fear had become so true. I had lost more than 2,000 euro in the 2 years for nothing. Nothing at all, just because no one felt responsible to send me the address of my bank. But at least I could pay Wesley now, so he would finally get me out of here. Maybe even a little would be left for me to make a living until I found work. After all, this 2,000 euro was in the local currency of Brazil, more than 5,000 reais, which is a lot of money. One good thing had the transfer to the consulate though. At least I saved the 27% tax. Still, I felt it was a baseless impertinence of Mr. Sturm to have acted against my decision. In addition, it was strange. Suddenly, he had to make no report to the Youth Welfare Office. Of course not. As long as there was no request from social services, no one had to report anything. The man just tried to bully me, just to make life even harder for me. It was not always sad and depressing. I experienced also some funny things, like that evening as we got aware of terrible roar and noise. Using a mirror, we watched as more and more police officers stormed up the stairs to the upper floors. Why, however, I only learned the next day, when Helena tried to tell me, shaken again and again by fits of laughter. Rosangela, one of my female colleagues, had stolen, together with others, a lot of alcohol from our company for disinfecting the hospital material the alcohol was used, and had held a big party in herself with it and boozed it up. She and her lesbian friend were drunk as skunks, or as they say in Brazil, as opossums. Attacked the female guards physically at locking time by beating them finally to flight. Subsequently, 2 male guards that had come upstairs had pocketed a proper beating and went to the ground. 2 other policemen were coming to aid of their colleagues, suffered the same fate. This spectacle was repeated until finally 8 policemen were lying on the ground beaten up. It was the 9th and the 10th. One of them was the shooter of the young woman who had died at the rebellion, getting those 2 fighting hands under control. I let Lena describe me the whole again in detail, and found it too funny. Sometimes I found it pretty bad to be staying on the ground floor. On the 2nd floor it was often much more exciting and more fun than television. I would have loved to watch 8 police officers go down. Laughing, Lena told me how in her cell a dispute almost broke out over the mirror and the square at the peephole at the door. No one wanted to miss the spectacle. And what about Rosangela? I asked. Nothing. The last police officer locked her and her friend in the cell, Lena replied. I was wondering a bit that this should remain without consequences, but in fact, Rosangela came, also a bit hungover, to work. Only 48 hours later it was decided that she had to go to castigo, and this had caused almost a riot. Well, fully right, for either punishment immediately or not at all. But probably the guards had their pants full, and no one wanted to lock that one in castigo. Nevertheless, she got 10 days castigo. Only, that was almost worth it, the fun to beat up 8 police officers. One day, I was just on the way back to work after the lunch break. I saw a woman passing me. I was sure to know very well. I turned around again. Yes, it really was her, Clagy from Arusha. I called her by her name, whereupon she came towards me, delighted, hugged me, and said, "My goodness, you, Rita! How nice to see you, but not nice that you're still here. And you? Why are you back inside?" I asked, not less pleased. "Drug dealing this time," she answered, and introduced me to her 2 companions. "These are Sidi and Dani. The 2 were arrested together with me. We liked each other from first sight, but I had to go to work, promised them to visit later their cell. The same day Wesley came to explain to me that it would not work out with liberdade condicional. Only after 2/3 of my sentence was this possible. Since my detention period exceeded 60 months, there was still time lacking until I reached the 40 months, but I wasn't planning to be staying as long as this. Wesley, however, was confident that with the result of the appeal and the subsequent penalty reduction could quite work out if it wouldn't even be a release. I asked him to talk with Julia about the address, because I still had not received an answer of her. I already did. She stands as warrantor for you by her name and address, he reported with a smile. This took a load off me. It was so good to know, to have friends on which one could rely on. Wesley repeatedly made the proposal for the semi-aberto request. Stop it with semi-aberto. I'm reading in the letters of Gilma what goes on there. For 5 months she had been waiting for work. What am I to live off for 5 months? Of my money, so that nothing is left afterwards. I'm not going to semi-aberto. Basta. Wesley, however, managed to convince me with plausible arguments. For you it is only an advantage concerning your right to stay here in Brazil that you will be dismissed from the semi-open prison. If you are released from here, it may happen to you that you will be taken directly to the airport. In addition, you have a fixed address and thus the right to spend the holidays at home. Not to mention your many years of professional experience in diverse industries. You speak fluent Portuguese, Spanish, English, and German. I can help you to find work. You will not wait 5 months for work. And think about this. During business hours, you are allowed to be outside. Okay, get it going for me. How long will it take until I can go? I gave myself half-beaten, semi-enthusiastic. Wesley was amused. For a month, you don't want it, and then it should be immediately, eh? Now, you have to wait a month or 2. It desperately broke out of me. Damn it, I want to get out. You finally almost have my money. Do something at last to get me out of here. To which he sought to appease my outburst. I'm doing what I can already. The fact that I didn't want any more mail from Germany was of course ignored by the consulate, and they still sent me the mail. So I received another report of the youth office and a letter from Michael. The development report on Michael this time was very positive. He was not convicted and apparently made a lot of effort in school. His notes looked good, and accordingly he had been moved to the 8th grade with 16. Michael's letter was very cool, full of doubts about me and full of accusations. I finally don't have time to write every day. No one ever asked you to do so. How am I supposed to get your money from the bank? They'll be laughing at me. I just wanted the address, my son. You're not reading my letters correctly. You hate the Germans? Then you probably hate me also. And what about you? You are probably the best German out there. Incorrectly. I don't feel at all as a German. And you're Afro-German, if German at all. And I love you, my son. And now, you want to get married again? Well, then the best of luck. You really don't read my letters well. If I get married at all, it will be only to stay here. And I'll say it again, I'm never coming to Brazil. Fine, as you please, and I'm not coming to Germany. End of the story. I would not let anyone put me under pressure, not even my son. Meanwhile, I took the letter and the statements fairly cool. Presumably, one got used to everything in time, even with the loss of the beloved child. I would answer him on this letter some day, when the prova was over. With horror, I saw the time rushing by. Only a few days left until the exams. Again and again I went through all my books. Still had the feeling, when I reached the end, that I had forgotten everything of the front. When I lamented towards Lena about this, she assured me, don't worry, you didn't forget. Your brain is only sorting out what is currently stored there. Oh yeah? Anyway, I had never been so uncertain before about any other exam. I just knew that I had to make it. It wasn't only that I didn't want to disappoint Julia, who was spending each week 10 reais on me and the exam by buying and sending me this expensive magazine. I also wanted to increase my chances to stay in Brazil. Until Friday, I cramped like crazy. Didn't write a single letter anymore. Apologized to Cleiji, Dani, and Sidi that I had absolutely no time. Saturday, the day before the exam, I relaxed and lazed outside with Helena on the mattress in the sun. It was the first warm and sunny day after the terrible cold, and for me a wistful date, 25th of August, 2007, Michael's 16th birthday. His 3rd birthday without me. But I would not allow this to afflict me now. I had to look forward. The great day had come. Initially, I got up good-spirited, had my coffee and showered. But the more the hands of the clock were advancing, the more nervous I became. To eat I couldn't be able, and I was glad when the waiting finally came to an end. At 12:30 midday, I met with the others in the school. One last cigarette, and another last. Then we were all divided into classrooms. The school principal gave instructions how the exam forms had to be completed. Then she distributed them. Everyone got a different color, thus different questions to the person sitting next to me. And at 1 o'clock we started. The questions were, as I already knew them from the old questionnaires, packaged in complicated texts, but I tried to be as short as possible to deal with each question. Since I had no clock available, I oriented myself on the noise of the visitors outside I could hear. As long as they were still there, we had time, for the visiting time was over by 3 o'clock. This made me quite secure. Big mistake. The visit was long gone, but outside football was played, accompanied by a lot of noise. The noise I confused with the noises of the visitors. When the guard suddenly pointed out that it was 5 o'clock, I realized my mistake. Shit! I was at question 50, and the essay I had, of course, not yet written. Now a light panic was spreading, but I got a grip of it, and tried as calmly as possible to keep going. 5:45. I was finished with the questions, and immediately started with the essay. 15 lines should be put on paper as minimum. I wrote just anything that occurred for the requested topic, equality. In my opinion, it was whist shit what I brought to paper. Also, I had the feeling that I violated all the rules of Portuguese grammar and emphasis and punctuation, but at least I managed to write 20 lines when Professora Janet found out appalled that in the attachment of my questionnaire, accordingly, the answer sheet was absolutely emptiness. In the excitement, I ticked my answers directly on the questionnaires, which of course would stay with me, instead of ticking the answers on the extra sheet. At 5:55, complete panic gripped me. Somehow I still managed to copy all the answers quickly to the corresponding sheet. Further was made an exception by giving me additional 5 minutes. Totally exhausted, I gave back the sheet with the answers. My head almost exploded. I hardly realized when everyone stormed at me with congratulations, first off for the fact that I never, in contrast to others, already long ago had thrown the towel, and managed until the end. This anyone had really believed of an extranjera. I struggled with the remark, "Don't congratulate me yet. Wait and see what the result looks like." Back in the cell, I took some tea to calm my nerves, watched happily Exalta Samba on TV, which I couldn't miss for nothing in the world, and immediately fell asleep afterwards. Only the next day I started worrying about whether I had really made it. Nevertheless, I welcomed Michelle with a hug and told her, relieved, that I had the prova behind me. Flavia, who participated with me in the prova, came during the short break over to our company to inform me that the answers were already released as notice of the bulletin board in school for comparison. Immediately, I went to compare the answers with mine. It was a damn narrow result. Of 63 questions, I had definitely answered 31 correctly. So far, cause some of the questions that I had left out in the beginning, in order not to lose too much time, I had ticked them blindly in the end on the answer sheet, because I preferred it to play the lottery instead of leaving some questions unanswered. After all, however, 50% were correct, thus securing the road to the faculdade. I toyed with the idea of studying tourism. I happily told Professora Janet and Donna Isabel, the formerly guard of the Estágio doing service now in the school, about my preliminary results. They were honestly happy for me, and by the behavior of Professora Janet, I knew now that she gave me so much shit at the time only to drive me to do more. She wanted me to make it. Back in the company, I proudly reported that I had done it. My boss, Donna Anna, also took part of the exams. I could hardly believe that an estrangera was better than her. Her result was 27 correct answers. I was happy because since my entire credentials were indeed destroyed by Chris, at least I could now prove the Brazilian high school education. This would immensely help to find a job, even if I did not study. The first one I informed by letter was, of course, Julia. The official result would indeed be available until November, when the essays were evaluated. But it was sure that I had reached the 50% mark. From the library I borrowed a book, of course in Portuguese, in order to relax that following week just reading. Regina was informed that she would be transferred to Semi-Aberto, the only normal and reasonable intelligent one in the cell. Tati was almost scary to me, with her foolhardiness. Everyone wanting to hear if she told proudly she conceded 15 years in prison because she shot a policeman. If on TV any firearms or murder scenes were shown, she was rejoicing. In my opinion, she was completely wrong here. She belonged in a loony bin. This was exactly what I finally wrote to the judge, who now was working on my process, that this was an affront to lock me in a cell with a madwoman. I also complained about the impossible treatment of foreigners, reported that I lost family, friends, and all my possessions, so this was probably punishment enough, that I couldn't endure these inhuman conditions any longer, and therefore asked to leave the rest of my sentence on probation. As I already feared, the stress in the cell started again, of course, after Regina left. From morning to night, the television boomed at full volume, either church program or MTV. Mostly I stayed now in the cell of clergy, and got along very well with her and the other two, because I could neither endure the television noise nor the corrosive loud voice of this stupid Tachi. After locking time, my phones were basically plugged into my ears, so I didn't have to endure the stupid twaddle of those two. More and more I clashed with the stupid Tachi, and was also mad at Rosie, because she wouldn't put no limit to the stupid girl. Until then, I bought all the cleaning products for the cell, but I saw no reason to do this anymore. Before the next purchase, I threatened to buy nothing. If we should run out of cleaner, I would just use washing powder of Tachi to clean the cell. When I made the threat true, there was again huge crash in the cell. I didn't have to touch her things. Well, you aren't stirring in my stuff any longer, said this, and took my washing up liquid from the sink, which was normally free to use for everyone. As she sought another dispute, I cut her off. I have no desire to discuss with you. You are too stupid for me, and not my class, so just don't talk to me. I don't want any stupid remarks from your side. Normally, the issue would be done for me, once and for all, but I noticed that once again I received no mail since Regina had left us. Frequently I called Tachi when she collected all letters in the morning, but at first I refused to believe that this actually was happening now for the third time that my letters had been stolen. The last one handed to me by Regina had been of Fatima and her ex-husband Josima. They wrote me already several times before, but these letters I had not received, and therefore the contact had been cut off. But in this letter, Fatima said that she would not forget me and would do anything to help me. Similarly, Josima already worried about that I might find another man to marry. He wanted to make nails with eggs and get married. To discuss everything necessary, he would want to see me as soon as possible. I should put his with Fatima's name on the visitors list. One sentence of Fatima touched me so much that tears came into my eyes. We are waiting here for you and Dilma until the day when we all come together like a real family. Michael got suddenly a new legal guardian. Strangely, were these folks not parent substitutes somehow? And they could be exchanged on demand just like that? I wrote to the new parental care, explained the many misunderstandings that had been about the concerns I had over Michael's future, and try to clear with some of the prejudices by his predecessor. Finally, I was also ready to answer Michael's furious letter. For the upteenth time, I responded to his allegations, wrote him that I loved him a lot and would always love him, and therefore also accepted if he wanted to stay in Germany, where he was apparently happy, but that he should concede to me for the same right. He had to finally realize that I never wanted to go back to Germany. Already I was happier here, despite the hell I still went through, than I ever was in Germany. I wished a new beginning for us, without mutual accusations, no matter how great the distance was, and assured him that I would always reserve a place for him should he change his mind one day. Also, I let him know that I would never give up my hopes to embrace him in my arms again. Of course, all this bothered me, but Clagy, Danny, and Cedar helped me not to lose my sense of humor. Clagy had the same opinion as Wesley, that the German consulate here would help me gain a toleration of 3 months. Since the German government pays no return ticket, I would have to earn it myself. With Clagy's Israeli boyfriend, the case was fairly similar. He was promised by his consulate already that they would help him to a 1-year stay, so he could prepare in peace for the marriage with Clagy. Now I wanted to know more, and asked Lena how it was with the South African consulate. Just the same. Damn it! Only this German consulate, or better say this Mr. Storm, didn't want to help me. I would confront him with it again, and should he again shoot square, I would complain about him in the foreign ministry.